People just want to be property developers. Everybody wants to be a property developer, and the big question is, why? Why does everyone want to be a property developer? It's sexy, right? Everyone thinks property development is sexy. Oh, you're a developer. Wow, cool. You know, it's fantastic. So what else? The money. I want the money. And what can the money do for you? You know, cars, houses, you know, holidays. But they all seem to forget one thing. Risk. All right? Risk. Everyone sees the wonderful, fantastic benefit side, but no one sees the business side. And risk management is what property developers do. It's our fundamental thing that sort of guides us through everything. So, for example, if you had a crystal ball sitting in front of you right now, tell me what's going to happen tomorrow. Can anyone tell me what's going to happen tomorrow? No. Property developers buy a site today to get their revenue in 2 to 3 years' time. How the hell do you know what's going to happen in 2 to 3 years' time? It's impossible. You can't. You don't know what's going to happen. I don't even know what's going to happen this afternoon. So how does a developer do that? And people say, oh, developers make these massive margins. Well, you know what developers do? They make a reasonable margin, but in all of their projects, they set aside what we call a risk margin. Risk management is critical. So risk management is the thing that drives property development. So anything that we can do to manage risk is good. Front end, buying the wrong site is a problem. It's a major problem. If you commit to acquiring a site and it's the wrong site, you're in trouble from day one. Real trouble, big trouble, financial trouble. So buying or acquiring that first site, or the site, right on day one is the single most essential risk management thing that we've got to deal with. Australia, population, let's have a look. If we weren't growing, there would be no demand for residential property. Or would there? There would be, for a number of reasons. But let's just look at our growth. So in 2015, the past growth had been at about 1.1%, per annum average, right? Since 2015, it's been a little bit higher. But when you look at it over the long term, we're sort of growing just over 1% a year. So in 2015, we had 23.9 million. In the census, what do we have? 25 odd. So it's a lot of people. Projections for 2025, 2043, 25. So, nearly double the population from 2015 to 2055. All of these people need to be accommodated. We've got to put them somewhere. So we've got to really contemplate, what do we do with these people? How do we accommodate them? And this is where government strategies of how they're going to do things, the rezonings that they do to facilitate medium density or high density residential in areas that are currently only housing, those sorts of things become critical. But we also have a couple of other things that are really interesting. We have a declining average family size. So in other words, 20 years ago, we used to have something like 2.7 persons per household. Now we have something like 2.3. So the number of people in every dwelling is reducing, which means we need even more accommodation for the same number of people. So even if we don't grow our population, we're growing demand for property simply because less people are living in each household. The other thing that's driving it is single person households. So we've got a whole new world of people living by themselves. And this is something that's very, very new. 30 years ago, it was very rare. We've got an ageing population. And with the ageing population, what tends to happen is one partner dies, the other one continues. So, and they stay in the home, the family home. So you have a single person in a very large home. That's another reason why our prices are going up, because they're not leaving those homes to families who need that sort of accommodation. But single person households are driving us upward in the number of properties. So again, even if we're not growing as a population, we're needing more and more dwellings for people to move out of a group environment into a single person environment. So we've got demand. And when we look at the amount of demand and what's happening particularly in the Sydney market, what's been happening over the years, the driver for the price going through the roof is not simply a matter of, there's a lot of demand for it. There's a whole swathe of economic factors that are affecting that. So we've got this massive amount of demand that is pent up. Now, the last few years, we've met that demand, but one of the reasons why our industry sort of has come into the current sort of hiccup that we've got, a couple of years ago, APRA, the Australian Prudential Regulatory Authority, APRA pulled back finance from the banks, made them rebalance their books, less development funding. So the Big Four started pulling back on development funding. They also pulled back on the number of interest-only loans. They stopped interest-only loans, which a lot of investors were buying individual properties. And they also made it harder for mum and dad investors to actually be able to borrow money to buy a lot of these properties because they were fearing a property bubble. So with that, with the difficulty with finance, this is what we've experienced now. People haven't been able to buy property because they can't get the funding. Banks are not letting them redraw against their own homes as much anymore. So it's created this problem where people can't get the equity out of their home to provide the equity into a second property. In doing that, we've stalled. So developers can't sell their stock. Developers can still get finance. So I can still get finance, but instead of paying, call it 6% from one of the major banks, I'm paying 9 or 10% from a secondary financier. But in a project, as long as it's relatively viable, I can do that. So the problem there, though, is selling my product. So I don't know that I'm actually able to sell my product. So a lot of developments have stalled. Because they've stalled, we've got a lot of those DA-approved sites currently on the market for sale. People trying to get rid of them because they bought it at the wrong time. They thought everything was going to be roses. They never applied risk management to what they were doing, and now they're suffering. So there's a lot of developers who are doing that.
Hi, this is Steve Chandler. Thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe below for further videos on how to be a property developer. And don't forget to share this video with any of your friends and family who may also want to be a property developer.